my loan officers is in a position where he wants more time. Like the demands of our jobs right now with the volume that we're doing is high, and he wants to be able to spend more time with his family. Okay, well, let's do a quick hourly rate calculation. All right, your W-2 is going to be X. On a normal 40-hour week, that comes out to X per hour. All right, I'll say, okay, let's look at your weekends. What are you doing Saturday? Oh, I'm going to spend the first half of the day in the yard on Saturday. Okay, well, that's 4 hours of yard work that you're doing. That is going to equate to, I mean, if you're making $50 an hour, that's $200. But you can get the yard service company to come over here and do it for $50. Well, you're coming out $150 to the positive on a dollar basis calculation there to get 4 extra hours to spend with your kids. Dude, that's a no-brainer. Call the yard company right now.
Yes. All right, my people. So on the call with me today is my very good friend. We were just talking for a while, and in our discussion, realized that the number of years that we have been friends and have known each other is longer than we either of us care to mention, because it tells the story of how we got all these grays in our beards. And it's been a long time since fourth grade. We've been friends. So. But the reason I wanted, and this is Prahl, and he works in the mortgage industry, helping people, what I hear in my space, a lot of times, achieve the American dream and do it in a way that makes them not feel like they're going crazy in the process. And that means a lot, I think, for a lot of people. And so he's got a business that is growing, even now, and the reason I say even now, if you're watching this or listening to this at some other time, we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and so it's kind of hard for a lot of people out there. But he is growing in the midst of all of this, and but more importantly, I know for sure that Brian cares about people and the experiences that people have, and I just wanted to share him with all of you. So, with that, Brian, welcome. You are on one of the first episodes of Vision Builders, and where we focus on freedom. So glad to have you. And why don't you just say hi to the people and tell them the details that I left out. Fill us in.
Oh, sure. First of all, man, thank you for even inviting me on here with you. I'm as old as we are now, which for some people is going to be disingenuous, and we're not that old. But I mean, we're pushing 40 at this point. Which for a fourth grader, you never even think about getting to the age that we are now. And
sure don't.
I have a lot of respect for you for the entirety of our relationship, man. So know that going into this, I am honored that you have invited me to come on here and do this conversation with you. But yeah, to your point, I've a mortgage business. I'm a W-2 employee of a large national lender, but we run our division very much like a franchise.
Okay.
So my group has grown significantly since we started our group. So we started it actually 6 years ago. August 1st was our first day as the Palmetto Mortgage Group, operating in the southeast part of the country primarily. And since that time, we've grown a lot. I mean, so over the last 4 years, we've averaged about 78% growth rate per year. And then this year, like you said, we're in the middle of a, you got to be careful about time dating these videos, right? I mean, so you don't want the content to be valuable forever. But to your point, we're in the middle of a COVID quarantine type situation where a lot of people aren't doing well. Our industry is the beneficiary of that. I mean, in every meltdown, there's going to be winners and losers. We happen to be in the right place at the right time. But what it's done for us is created an environment where we are able to help more people. Mm-hmm. And to your point, and I read a lot of like self-help business type books, and I believe it was Zig Ziglar that said you can have anything you want in this world as long as you help enough other people get what they want.
Yeah.
So my mentality has been along those lines since I started doing mortgages. And the people I'm focusing on helping changes a little bit. So as I've elevated in my career, the end client is always the crux of who we're trying to help. But my role is helping loan officers and processors and employees of ours grow and help themselves in their careers so that they can help more of the end consumer, if that makes sense. So yeah, the mindset is always do as much good as you possibly can, and you're going to do well as a result.
Yeah, that's interesting because I feel like, there's always this kind of after picture that people have in mind, but they don't see it as an after picture. They kind of have this idea that like, well, so-and-so is just successful or they're fortunate. And while I think you and I both would consider ourselves very fortunate, um, these hands have worked. You know what I mean? Like
Well,
they
to
put in some
illustrate
effort.
that, I mean, so I started as a loan officer in 2010. Prior to that, I worked at a bank, a big national bank, and got to the point where I felt like I was at the ceiling. I was kind of capped in the role that I had. But I made good money. And so
Mhm.
at the time, it was six-figure income that I made. Went out on my own, basically as a loan officer, which is 100% commission. Basically, you own your own business, and went from a six-figure income to making $18,000 my first year as a loan officer. At the same time, my wife, who had a decent paying sales job, quit her job and went back to school to be a sonographer. So we went from 120 plus household income to $18,000 the next year. Looking back, I honestly have no idea how we did it. I don't, but it
Yeah.
worked. And you're right. So when you get the grinder type mentality and you focus your energy in an area that is positive, like greed never works, right? So if you
But
focus
it
on
doesn't.
trying to help people, eventually you're going to get lucky,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good thing for everybody to hear. I mean, I don't know if I know a single success story that doesn't have at least one or maybe five stories like that. Like the setbacks in the midst of the moving forward. And but I think what you said is greed doesn't work. At some point you actually have to care about bringing value to people. And I think you are a prime example. Your story is a prime example of like of how that kind of plays itself out. And so speaking of your story, you kind of shared a little bit about that, but I want to go back. I want to go back to well, I mean, I guess I was there in part of the story, but like, I want to go back to little Brian and kind of some of the things that you maybe heard growing up or learned from family, friends, parents, etc., that maybe shaped you in the direction for doing what you're doing now. Is there anything that stands out?
Yeah, a couple of things. And it's funny too, because my parents, right?
Yeah,
For those that don't, my parents are awesome. I was truly
true story.
blessed having great role models as parents. My mom was an educator. My dad was a salesman. Prior, he was a teacher, and then went into a sales role. And both of them were blue collar upbringings, lower middle class kind of upbringings, and so that kind of forms your mentality about money and finances and careers.
Mm-hmm.
So I got ingrained with me at an early age, like a significant work ethic. I played baseball, right? So I was
Mm-hmm.
a small college Division II level athlete. And it's funny because I always rode my baseball talent as far as I was going to let it go. Like I never grinded and worked as a baseball player.
Yeah.
Not that I would have been a major league baseball player or anything if I had worked harder, but I just didn't have that drive, right? And so my dad will tell me even now, he's like, Brian, I got to tell you, I am honestly proud and surprised at how hard you work in your career. Because if you would have asked me about 18-year-old Brian, I would have said, there's no way. And so, as embarrassing as that is to tell, it's true. Like,
Heck is
it
honest,
clicked for
isn't
me a little bit later on than it did. And I just so there's that. But I think the foundation of effort and hard work was instilled early, right? And so I
it?
recognized the fact that I didn't grind as hard as I could on the baseball diamond at that age. I just didn't want to do it. And I don't know why that was. I didn't love it as much as I wanted to, or needed to, I guess, to work that hard at it. Now in my career, I have an opportunity to influence a lot of people in a positive manner. And as out of that has grown a love for the effort, right? And so the
Mm-hmm.
grind is something that I actually enjoy. The pressure of a sales role or an entrepreneurial role is, I mean, you've got to deliver month in and month out forever, or you don't get paid,
There's
right?
no off.
And there isn't an off, right? And so
Yeah.
that's hard to deal with for a lot of people. But for me, my wife will tell you today that I thrive off the pressure, right? And so that's something that can be learned. It's not something that's necessarily instilled at birth. I mean, that's something that can be developed over time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to develop that amongst my loan officers in the same way that I kind of developed over the course of time. My goal being to instill that drive at an earlier point in their career than it took me, right?
Yeah.
Um, Another lesson, I guess, about my parents is that I told you they were blue collar, kind of Democrat type mentality, right? Like corporations bad, rich people bad, hardworking blue collar people good, right? And that's kind
Yeah.
of like,
Yeah.
and it's fun because that's something that gets instilled into your psyche early, and it's taken me time to dispel that myth. right?
Mm-hmm.
Like to me, the wealthiest people I know are also the most generous people that I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so my experience with people of wealth is very and vastly different than my parents were, right? And so
Yeah.
that's, you're getting ingrained different ideas and different philosophies about what it means to have status or have wealth or to achieve financial freedom, if we're talking about freedom. And to me, that's what it is. I mean, to me, money isn't, oh, I get to go buy a new sports car, or oh, I get to flash a Rolex. It's, oh, I get to tell the man to kiss off because I am financially independent. I can go do what I want to do.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so that's
Yeah.
been a goal of mine since really I started is to be, in fact, so I own the building that my office is out of, me and my business partner, and we named the LLC that we own the building in 2029 properties because our goal is to be able to retire by 2029.
Wow.
And so that's the kind of mentality that I kind of have developed over the last 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, well, and I mean, there's some specificity even in the name, and it's funny, but like the idea of understanding when you start to understand that working hard and developing freedom. I mean, your goal. It's funny that you say it, like even as you tell the story, the ability to do what you want to do. To be who you want to be. I mean, you and I were having a conversation a few days ago where we were just kind of talking about there's this little to be in the right place at the right time and to be thriving in the midst of a season when so many people are struggling. There's almost this feeling of like we want to talk about like our successes? Is that, I mean, this is the time we should shut up, right? Like, is that
what have I done to deserve this?
Exactly. But at the same time, you also mentioned something that I thought was not surprising, but it was exciting. It was like, what this season has meant for you in terms of like giving. You want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you feel blessed to be in the position that you are while other people are struggling. And even if they're not, like if you're doing well, to quote Obama, I mean, you didn't do that yourself, right? I mean, there was a team of people. There are a lifetime of people that have influenced my life in a way that have gotten me to where I am today.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't discount the level of effort that I put in or the level of intelligence that you have to have or anything like that. I mean, that stuff needs to be celebrated, but it's short-sighted to not acknowledge that you had help along the way, right?
Yeah.
Now, in addition to that, we are in our industry earning higher levels of income than we have ever, really. I mean, so for those that don't know much about the mortgage industry, in 2006, 7, and 8, it was great. All of a sudden, the housing crash happened, and 80% of loan officers got out of the business because they couldn't pay their bills.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so since that time, we've been on a upward trajectory for 12 years now, or thereabouts. And now it's at a peak again where we're earning higher levels of income than we have historically. And so you got to give back, right? I mean, so our mantra as loan officers is make more, save more, give more. Mm-hmm. And all three of those avenues are important when it comes to earning higher levels of income. We call it make it stick, right? So if you're making a lot of money, but your spending increases correspondingly, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're not making it stick. So you've got to earn more, and then you're going to save more. And if you're a religious person, you tithe, give your 10% or whatever the number is. More is important, right? So if you're earning more, giving more becomes important. And I think there's a level of humility that creates while you're earning more that, in my opinion, hopefully, and maybe even selfishly, helps that sustain longer term. Does that make sense? I mean,
it makes a ton of sense.
Exists, I mean, that you want the karma to be on your side.
Well, if it does, we want to be winning in that category. Well, that's cool. I mean, yeah, it makes a ton of sense because it's interesting. I'm gonna steal that, by the way, to make it stick, because it's just such an easy way. I mean, my team is about to hear about this now, but like you're right. I was just had the opportunity to talk with a guy who was just telling me the story about how the idea that you only pass this way once, and so any good that you can do, you want to be able to do. And so for him, what that meant was when he was in the Air Force, that after he started getting promoted past second lieutenant, like he wanted to continue to live off of second lieutenant money so that he could save more, give more. And now, he's been able to create this incredible network where people can connect through, kickball and cornhole and other sorts of things. And it's meant a lot to a lot of people that I know personally, and all this because he had he wouldn't have used these words necessarily, but I'm going to tell him, so maybe he will start. This make it stick mentality that you just mentioned. I think that's huge. And so, well, man, the one thing before we get too far down the road, I work in a space where we're same stuff. Like, we want to help people achieve their goals, like to be able to accomplish their goals. And so, before I get into the real question of the hour, we're not really going an hour, but is to let people know, if you want to have some conversations about your goals and how to accomplish them, by all means, get at me on my Instagram, Chu Opara, at Chu Opara, CHUOPARAH. And I want to connect with you and help you. And so, just knowing that on Instagram, on Facebook, it's all the same. If you look me up, you can get at me. And assuming that you are in the US, I could probably help you or direct you to somebody who can. So, with that being said, the real question, and you kind of have answered it in a few different ways, is really twofold. One, what does freedom mean? And you talked a little bit about being able to tell the man. I'm not sure who this man is, but I've been trying to tell him stuff my whole life. I know there are some deeper legs to this whole idea of freedom and what it means moving forward in your family, even.
Yeah, and how much time do we have? I mean, we could
Bro.
talk for hours about that specific question. And so I say that, like, tell the man, because that's what my dad taught me growing up. Like, LeBron, you need to save your money so that if your boss comes in and does some things you don't like and you don't want to be a part of that company anymore, you have the ability to not be beholden to your paycheck, your job coming in every. So to me, that's kind of where that stems from. It's more of I have the ability to sustain, without any income coming in, my bills for X amount of time. And everybody will have their own definition of what freedom is. But to me, to be wealthy, it's not a function of how much money you have. It's a function of how many months you can live at your current lifestyle without running out of money. Right?
Yeah.
It's more of a time function than it is than a dollar amount function.
Yes. Yeah.
So debt becomes a big part of that, right? And so I've got no debt but my mortgage, and hopefully that'll be done in a few years. So that's the kind of thing when I'm saying freedom. Like, to me, it's more of you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Like, I have a boss, right? So if my boss comes in and says, "Oh, Brian, you know what? I don't care if the market says people can get 3% on their mortgage rate. You're going to charge them 4.5% because we need to make money." Well, I wouldn't want to do that. So I would say, no, I'm not going to do that. And if you don't want me to work here anymore, great. I'm going to go do something else now because I have the ability to do so. It becomes much more difficult to make those decisions based on whatever values you hold or moral code that you have if you don't have a net worth with which to sustain yourself. So money, to me, is the ability to live by whatever values you hold dearest and not stray from those without any financial pressure to have to do so.
That's huge. That's incredible. And, I would agree wholeheartedly. That's one of the things that in my space, I'm always sharing with people is like, freedom or financial freedom, really, it's a function of time, right? Like, how many hours can you string together with the money that you have? Okay, how many weeks, how many months, how many years? Like, what does it actually mean?
And it goes to a shorter term thing. So I literally had this conversation last week. One of my loan officers is in a position where he wants more time. Like, the demands of our jobs right now with the volume that we're doing is high, and he wants to be able to spend more time with his family. Okay, well, let's do a quick hourly rate calculation. All right, your W-2 is going to be X. On a normal 40-hour week, that comes out to X per hour, right? Call it $25 an hour, $30 an hour, whatever it is. All right, I'll say, okay, let's look at your weekends. What are you doing Saturday? Oh, I'm going to spend the first half of the day in the yard on Saturday. Okay, well, that's 4 hours of yard work that you're doing. That is going to equate to, I mean, if you're making $50 an hour, that's $200. But you can get the yard service company to come over here and do it for $50. Well, you're coming out $150 to the positive on a dollar basis calculation there to get 4 extra hours to spend with your kids. Dude, that's a no-brainer. Call the yard company right now.
Yes.
Right? Now, and same thing can be applied to any of those services. In addition to the fact that you're getting more time, you're actually stimulating the economy by providing work to somebody who can use the work. And so there's that kind of calculation is something that an exercise that we go through not just for yard work or house cleaning or whatever those types of things are, but as it pertains to what we're doing in our business too. I mean, so if I have, as a loan officer, need to call 100 realtors a week in order to do the volume levels that I want to do, well, if it's going to take me X amount of hours and that's at a cost of $50 an hour, but I could hire somebody at $12.50 an hour to do the same thing, why am I not hiring the $12.50 an hour employee? There's nothing but positives that come in. And so that kind of calculation, as it pertains to freedom, which is the larger question, is something that we spend a lot of time focusing on, because if there's something that we can hire out or delegate out or have somebody else do for us equally good as us, which in my industry, you don't have to be very good. You know what I mean? Somebody at $15 an hour can do just as good as the $100 an hour guy, given the right scripts and training. And so we do that exercise often when it comes to, like, I want people making a lot of money, also spending a lot of time. You got to have the balance. And so that's where the freedom part comes in again.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and honestly, like, I'm sure you have read a lot of Napoleon Hill stuff, because, you know, it's like the source code, right, of the personal development movement. But, you know, one of the things that he writes about is in telling a story about Henry Ford. I'm pretty sure I've got this right. I'm pretty sure it's Napoleon Hill. He says, you know, the wealthy buy time and the poor sell it.
Yeah,
right.
That's Think and Grow Rich. I think page 68.
That's
I don't
really
know the
funny.
page. I'm kidding.
I've got it up here. I'm about to go look. Like, what page is it? But that's an interesting thing that you said, because, like, you know, my dad used to change his oil, and one day he looked at me and said, "It doesn't make sense for me to change my own oil." And at the time, I didn't know what he was talking about, but he had recently handed me the book Think and Grow Rich and told me to read it. So now, like, looking back 30 plus years, or not 30, about, I don't know, maybe 25 years, I'm realizing, like, that it occurred to my dad one time reading books like Rich Dad Poor Dad and Think and Grow Rich, and him handing me those books, that he was having that sort of transformation, and I got to witness it. Like, my dad used to he had ramps in the garage, and he would, you know, you know, hey, take this, and I would help him. And at some point he was like, "Nope, I'm not. And by the way, it's good that you boys know how to mow the lawn, because I'm not doing that either." And so, yeah, I mean, those calculations are really, really important to do, because I think a lot of times people, because, you know, from that blue collar background, you know, my parents are academics, but I'm also an immigrant.
Right. So,
like, you know, that whole manage with what you got until you get what you need sort of philosophy that I learned from my dad. There was for a period of time, like you're talking about dispelling old beliefs, where I kind of felt like I had to grind it out, only to realize, you know, he developed too. Like, my dad also was growing and developing, and at some point was like, new thought. It doesn't, when I consider what I make an hour, you know, based on my salary, what my time is worth, it doesn't make sense for me to spend my time doing that.
Unless you like it. I know a lot of people that really enjoy art. It's like their mental reprieve to go out there and cut the grass. So cool. If you like it, you can do it. But if you don't, then don't. Yeah.
And my dad was a gardener in college. Like, I think he legit liked yard work, but when weighed against time with us, it wasn't cool enough to not hang out with us. You know what I mean? So speaking of just kind of, you know, spending time with your kids too, if you were to tell, you've got two girls, your girls are older than my girls, but, you know, at some point, you know, Godspeed the day that we can all get together and eat something delicious. That would be fun. But if you could go back and tell young Brian anything, what would that be? And then the follow-up question to that is, like, what is really important to you to make sure your daughters know, not just necessarily about money, but in general, so they can have a modicum of freedom beyond, or at an earlier stage, so to speak, than you started to conceptualize those things?
I was thinking about this the other day too, and I was having a conversation with a guy that works in my company, who I report to actually, and I have a lot of respect for. And he just had his 46th birthday, And he said, I don't know at what point in your life you start feeling like an adult, but I'm not there yet, right? And so, and so I think as a kid, I thought that once I was done with school, the learning stopped, and I was excited about that. But what's developed over time is that the act of learning and developing becomes the motivating factor. Like I enjoy the fact that I am better tomorrow than I am today than I was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once that stops is when you start getting old.
Right?
Yeah. And so to that point, though, I would say to young me that your friends that you want to be so cool and accepted by in high school aren't going to mean anything to you when you're 30. So just be true to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Understand what your core values are. Live to them daily, no matter what cultural norms become. And I think that I still struggle with that. If I'm being completely vulnerable and honest, I still yearn for acceptance from places that I don't need to be accepted. And so I think that if I had a deeper understanding of that at a younger age, I would be further along in my development in that particular facet. Right now, at 39, almost 40 years old. For my daughters, I want them to be in a situation where they are not dependent on anybody for what they need. And so, same thing, just in a slight twist to it. They need to get educated in a field that they love. So the freedom will come from something that they enjoy doing, not something that they have to do, and then not need to get married for sustenance. I want them to be able to be free to do what they want. I think love comes easier. Not to get too deep and sappy and philosophical for this.
Bro, bring it.
I think love comes easier when it doesn't come out of a place of necessity, right?
Yeah.
And so
it certainly comes more genuine that way.
Very much so, correct.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. In fact, like, since I know you, what you just said means a lot more to me. And so for the sake of anybody who might be watching this, Brian was one of the popular kids in school. Like, it's funny. Like, I love being able to watch your face as I say that out loud, because you're like, but that didn't mean anything. Like, I can see the disdain even now, like, on your face for that season. But like, to say, I think all of us, if we're being honest, want to be thought of a certain way by people, right? And unfortunately, sometimes that way that we want to be thought of can be a moving target, and it can steal so much of our energy and our focus. And I feel like one thing that Ed Milet has said a lot of, over the last couple of years is it's the addiction to acceptance can be one of the biggest killers of your dreams and your goals and the things that you're trying to accomplish in life. And I love that you're still wrestling with that, man, because it doesn't go away. Like, you don't get to graduate in this life to a point where, like, I sincerely don't care. I wish that, I mean, in my experience anyway, and with the people that I've hung out with, like, I feel like if we're being vulnerable, being honest, like, it's always a struggle, but it's a fight worth having, right? It's a battle worth engaging in.
You gotta love the honesty of children, right?
Most of the
and
time.
my 8-year-old tells me somewhere, I have a pool in my backyard, and we were going swimming, and I had this flower bathing suit, like, it's a blue bathing suit with flowers on it. And she's like, "Daddy, I think your bathing suit's really bad. You don't need to be wearing that." Well, I almost went and changed until I realized that I don't care what my 8-year-old thinks about my bathing suit. I'm the one swimming.
Yes. That's awesome. My 3.5-year-old has definitely told me more than once that she doesn't like the shirt I'm wearing. Or sometimes, like, I'll be wearing something and she'll look at me and say, "Daddy, I like that shirt. Can you wear that forever?" And I'm like, I wish this didn't move me as much as it does. my little chatterbox. Not sure how I got such a chatty little girl. I'm not certain where that came from, but
I got to tell you this too. For those that are watching us and whether they know you or not, if you don't know Kalechikwu, you definitely are doing yourself a service if you do get to know him. And I know that this isn't a commercial for what you do, but if anybody wants an honest opinion of any situation that they're in, Chu is the guy to give it to you. No bias, no pressure, no anything other than honest feedback, honest intentions. Man, you have been an inspiration to me for almost 30 years now, man. So I just want you to know.
That means a lot. This means a lot because I have a ton of respect for you. And, It was no small thing that your parents said yes to feeding me every time I came over, because I ate a ton of food back then. But man, this has been awesome. We should do more of these, and of course, one day we'll all get together in person someday soon. I hope so. We're getting to the end. How can people get in touch with you? What areas are you in? How can people avoid going to banks to be told less than useful information?
Email or phone, my cell phone number is 803-348-0975. I'm in Columbia area of South Carolina, but we operate up and down the East Coast out to Texas. I've got loan officers in 48 or 50 states that we could refer you to if you do need help. So I'm happy to help you in any way I can. Awesome. Well, with that, Brian, always a pleasure. Love the conversation. Everybody, always remember, build a vision, build a life. See you next time. Peace. Thanks for watching, guys. I want to connect with you. There's 4 ways to do that. One, obviously right here, leave a comment so I can get to know you and how I can better serve you through this content. Also, you can reach me on Instagram at ChuOPara. ChuOPARAH, also at ChuOPara on Facebook, and also you can go to chuopara.com just to connect with me. I want to hear from you so that we can always make this more accessible to more people. That way we can maybe create a world where more people are experiencing freedom by becoming vision builders.